of our children. Who isn't willing to say that? I don't know anyone who isn't. Well, I think we've indicated there are some who are reluctant, but most of us understand that. And if you're talking about, again, the work in artificial intelligence, in kinetics, in quantum computing, those are the types of things that we clearly can move forward on this. And this report will help us to do that.
Just a couple. Former Intel community worker too is Denver Riggleman.
Thanks, and it's good to have a fellow B1 guy up here with me. It's fantastic. But there's other things we can do besides legislation. If you look at pages 80 to 83 on the report, it's not just the fact that we're working hypersonics, we're working quantum computing, but it's the economic intelligence that we have to start as a discipline in the United States Congress. Because it's really about the cascading effects of how that investment works. So when you see up here like former intelligence officers, everybody up here that has incredible expertise, I know we talked about COVID, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So what we have to do is we have to look at the Chinese threat from an economic battle space also, and also in space and what we're doing there. And that's what's incredible about this. It's not just the incredible legislation in a bipartisan way we have. We can use organizations like the Export-Import Bank and the Development and Finance Corporation and start looking at Chinese economic encirclement and actually direct our defense spending, our intelligence spending, and our infrastructure spending so that we can stop the encirclement that's going on in China and the Belt and Road Initiative. So it's not just the legislation that we can have, it's the money that we already have in our coffers, and it's the ability to use this report in order as a timeline, but also as a strategy to go after. And I'll tell you this, I think what we have up here with this group, and when you heard Chris Stewart, you hear the leader, and you hear people like Mike Gallagher, is that we have the opportunity right now to address this problem. That's why it's so bipartisan. That's why it's so important. And as an intelligence officer, a former intelligence officer, this policy document might seem boring to some people, but this is like the diehard of policy documents for geeks. So I think that's why people need to actually dive into this and make sure that they read this. And that's why I'm so proud to be on this task force. But there's things we can do outside of legislation with the groups we have now. I think you need to look at the executive order from President Trump of May, right? May of 2020, when it comes to the DFC and actually how we can combat economic encirclement by the Chinese. Thank you.
Let's all have former Green Beret, Congressman Waltz.
I just wanted to come back to your question on COVID. One of the bipartisan recommendations we have on here that we're trying to move through the defense bill has to do with our pharmaceuticals. Bipartisan in the Senate, we're moving it, we're trying to move it through the defense bill that, look, we've lost the ability, whether it's our antibiotics, whether it's oncology medicines, we've lost the ability to produce those pharmaceuticals domestically. And when you have a state spokesman from the Chinese Communist Party suggesting that maybe they withhold the raw ingredients and withhold those drugs from all Americans in the midst of a pandemic, I think that's absolutely the time that we need to look at how we onshore that manufacturing again. So this is absolutely relevant to what's going on in Corona. It's relevant to every American and all of our constituents. And these are bipartisan bills that truly should be moving through the House. The other piece, don't just take this from us. Look at President Xi's actual speeches, not the state translation, but the actual translation where he talks about a new world order where China calls the shots and the United States and our free world allies do not. That is something that we absolutely have to address now. How are they getting to the top to be the new dominant world order? Through technology. And they're stealing their way to the top through cyber, as Representative Gallagher mentioned, through our universities. We've had arrests now at Harvard, University of Texas, Texas A&M, Emory, University of Florida, Ohio State. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what the Chinese have done to infiltrate our academic institutions. And then finally, they're buying it. And they're buying up key technologies through mergers and acquisitions. And we need to begin rethinking this in our financial sector as well. So look, this is a whole of government, whole of society effort and competition that we're in that we cannot afford to lose for our children and grandchildren. It's my honor, thank you, Leader, to be a part of it.
I want to thank all the members for their participation. This will not be the last you hear of this. This will be the bedrock. Yes, one more. One thing I know, we would like, oh, I'm sorry. We would like to see a COVID relief bill, one that is bipartisan. Unfortunately, having done 4 of these relief bills, there's always seems to be a common denominator. When Speaker Pelosi gets involved, it always gets delayed. And in this last COVID relief bill that we've been trying to do, she's been the driving force behind it and really the driving force of not having it happen. She told us in August we would not leave until we got one done, but she sent everybody home. She called us back during August for an emergency of the post office. The House Republicans actually proposed the only ability that we have in an MTR to move forward on some COVID relief. The Democrats voted it down. Again, when we look at what Nancy Pelosi is proposing today, it's simply the HEROES Act that's already failed. It still talks about marijuana more than it talks about jobs. The only deduction that they have is 600 million cutting of the police force when the streets are less safe today than they were before. So I do too. I do too. It's unfortunately, it's easy to the answer. The answer is I want to have a bipartisan bill. I want to come to an agreement. I am more than willing to sit down and make sure we get one. Unfortunately, the speaker will not move. That is why we have a discharge petition on the floor right now. Because of the speaker's action, that is why she has 23 members of her own party warning her that they will sign the discharge petition for PPP. The fundamental part of what we actually proposed to make sure that people would keep their jobs, that small businesses would stay open. Remember history here, the very short history. When we did our first CARES bill, that Sunday when we came back in, what did Speaker Pelosi do? She blew up what even Schumer said he was agreeing to the day before and waited another week. After we got that passed and she got more money for the Kennedy Center, the only reason why she held it, then we were running out of money because it was so successful to help these small businesses pay their rent and pay their employees, that the Treasury Secretary asked not to change any legislative body, but to actually have more money put in. She famously that late night in front of the refrigerator told the nation no and delayed it even further so more people were laid off. Each time we have tried to do this, she has stepped in to delay the process. There might be many reasons why she thinks that's smart. Maybe it's a political reason, but it's not smart for the people who are unemployed. Even her own number two said $600 on the unemployment extra, that is $15 an hour extra of what's being paid, is not a red line, and that people should actually change that. But she made it a red line to make it not happen. There are times, and again, that she has denied this from moving forward. So when Treasury Secretary Mnuchin puts forth a plan that it could be bipartisan, we would seriously be able to look at that and make sure we move forward. But if Nancy Pelosi continues to run forward, it's not a $2.2 trillion bill. It's the exact same bill that she had before. All she does is put these fundamental cliffs in that is still what goes out to 2.6. She's not serious about it. That is why the American people are hurting. That is why 23 people of her own party are warning her that they will go with the Republicans. The only measure we have, because she controls all, is a discharge petition so the American public can understand what that is. If 218 people are willing to sign a piece of paper to move a bill to the floor that Steve Chabot has put together, he was the architect of the PPP. He has reforms in there to help the small businesses, the same thing that we tried to move before. It's interesting in the continuing resolution that she would not put it on the floor in the normal sense that she went to having it on suspension. Why? Because the Republicans would have an MTR. And we again would have fought to make sure that there would be COVID relief for the American public. The only thing that is holding up COVID relief for the American public is one person. The one person that has all the power in this House. The one person that has delayed every time we have done it before, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So the question was to me, yes, Republicans will be more than willing to support a bill to get relief. But the real question would be, is Nancy Pelosi going to deny us one more time? And she's not denying me. She's hurting the American public. Maybe she thinks it helps her politically come November. But I want her to look in the faces of the people that are laid off. I want her to look at the small businesses that have shut for good. I want her to look at the schools that are fearful that they're going to have, that they don't have any liability protection because they're being sued, or they don't have the money to actually protect, to have the PPE to go forward. It's interesting to me that in LA County, the own health department person says, we're going to keep the schools closed until the election. No science based upon that. But this nation is too great for an idea so small as to play politics with COVID, and the speaker knows better. Thank you.